The ambient hum of ventilators echoed through the pristine, glass-encased suite on the top floor of Providence Heights, an elite private medical facility nestled in the redwood-covered hills of Northern California. The lights were dimmed to a soft amber glow, casting long shadows across the room where Cameron Drake, 43, lay still beneath crisp white linens. To the public, he was the comatose victim of a catastrophic plane incident. But behind those closed eyelids, something far more dangerous was stirring. Cameron Drake wasn't just any patient. He was one of the most enigmatic minds in Silicon Valley, a self-made billionaire whose software empire, Drake Dynamics, had revolutionized digital infrastructure across the country. He was also one of the only black CEOs ever to break into the upper echelons of Fortune 100 leadership. 18 days ago, his private Gulfstream G650 had suffered a mysterious hydraulic failure mid-flight and crash-landed in Arizona. The media called it a miracle that he had survived. All that remained was a faint, angry red scar stretching diagonally across his left temple, his sole visible injury. At least, that's what they wanted the world to believe. What no one knew, not the neurologists, not the nurses, not even the renowned specialists flown in from Johns Hopkins, was that Cameron had regained consciousness 3 days after the crash. And instead of signaling his recovery, he chose stillness. Deliberate, calculating stillness. The kind that only comes from a man who smells betrayal in the air and knows that any wrong move could cost him his life. Across a thick pane of reinforced glass, voices floated in, muted but decipherable in the sterile hush of the room. Cameron's breath slowed as he listened, his mind sharply tuned to every syllable. "We can't stall much longer, Penelope," said a man's voice, smooth and steely. "The board's already drawing up the incapacitation clause." Penelope Drake, his wife at least legally for the past 9 years. Tall, blonde, and polished to a fault, she stood on the other side of the glass in a white designer pantsuit that looked more fitting for a corporate gala than a hospital vigil. Next to her was Avery Caldwell, Cameron's half-brother and chief operating officer of Drake Dynamics. Her tone was clipped, impatient. "This isn't just about the company anymore, Avery. The press is circling. The investors are growing restless. Even the feds are asking questions about that damn Aurora file he was working on." Avery's chuckle was dark. "Let them look. They won't find anything we didn't scrub. Besides, we're a week away from transferring executive control. Once the board votes, we can quietly shutter Project Aurora and reroute those funds. Just like we planned." Cameron's heart pounded beneath the beeps of his heart monitor, the only sign of life in an otherwise motionless frame. There it was. Proof. The accident had been no accident. And the people plotting his professional funeral weren't enemies in the shadows, they were family. His own blood and wife. Penelope's voice dropped into a whisper. "What about his attorney, Naomi Ellis? She keeps requesting the original black box data." Avery's lips curled. "She'll be handled. An anonymous tip to the California State Bar just went out. Something about misappropriation of client funds. With any luck, she'll be too busy fighting for her license to dig into any black boxes." Cameron's jaw tightened beneath the skin. Naomi Ellis wasn't just his legal counsel. She was his former law school professor, one of the few black women in corporate litigation, and the architect of every airtight contract that protected Drake Dynamics from the inside out. If they were targeting her, it meant they were burning every bridge behind them. Suddenly, the sliding glass door hissed open. Soft, deliberate footsteps entered the room. Different, lighter, more cautious. "Good evening, Mr. Drake," came a voice clear, measured, and devoid of the saccharine tone so many nurses used with the unconscious. "I'm Celeste Monroe, your new overnight nurse." Cameron caught the faint scent of lavender as she moved silently across the floor. He listened as she adjusted his foreline and made notations on her digital tablet. "Vitals are stable," she murmured, almost to herself. "That's encouraging." Then, a pause. The subtle creak of a chair being pulled up beside the bed. "I don't know if you can hear me," she said, her voice now softer, confessional. "But I need you to know I shouldn't be here." Cameron's mind sharpened, his breath unchanged. "I wasn't supposed to be assigned to this case. I was called in last minute to replace a nurse who suddenly resigned. But something's wrong. Last night, while reviewing your logs, I found inconsistencies." She leaned in closer, her voice a breath. "The sedatives in your 4 are triple the standard protocol for your condition. and the reflex response entries they've been forged. Cameron's heart skipped. Not enough for the machine to detect, but enough for him to feel it in his chest. "I'm not just a nurse," she added, her tone now surgical. "I specialize in forensic neurology. And Mr. Drake, someone is keeping you in this state on purpose." He wanted to scream, to speak, to move, but all he could do was listen. "I don't know who's behind it," she whispered, "but I promise you this. I'm going to help you wake up." She stood, smoothed the blanket over him, and walked to the force stand. "I've already begun tapering the sedatives. No one will notice, not yet. But soon, very soon, you'll start to come back." Just then, the door opened again. A man's voice one Cameron recognized instantly. "Vitals check?" asked Dr. Marcus Tillman, the hospital's head of neurology and Penelope's longtime associate. Celeste's voice changed instantly, crisp and controlled. "All stable, doctor." "Good," Tillman replied. "I'll take it from here." As she stepped aside and left the room, Cameron lay frozen, but his pulse carried a new rhythm, hope. In a world where he had been paralyzed by betrayal, someone had just stepped into the storm, not to pity him, but to fight alongside him. The second night after Celeste Monroe's confession arrived like a slow tide. Outside the panoramic windows of the suite, the pines swayed against a silver sky. The facility staff changed shifts, footsteps echoing in the marble corridor. Inside room 17A, Cameron Drake's body lay still as ever, but his mind was racing like wildfire through a forest of betrayal. When the door whispered open just past midnight, he knew who it would be. "Evening again, Mr. Drake," Celeste said, her voice barely above the ambient beeping of the heart monitor. "We're alone." He heard the chair scrape closer, the delicate crinkle of a paper packet, likely gloves, and the low hum of the vitals monitor as she began her routine. "I need to be sure," she said, her voice thick with hesitation. "I know you're in there. I just need a sign." There was a beat of silence. Then Cameron did it. He flexed his right index finger. Just barely. Once. Twice. Celeste froze. She dropped the stylus. Her eyes widened, searching his face. Her hand gently brushed his. There it was again. 2 more twitches. She gasped and stepped back as if the world had split beneath her feet. You're conscious?" A smile nearly broke across his face, but his control held firm. He blinked once. Celeste's hand trembled, but her expression transformed from disbelief to resolve in mere seconds. Okay, she breathed. "We'll need a system. 1 blink for yes, 2 for no. Can you do that?" 1 slow blink. "Good," she nodded. "Tomorrow, I'll bring flashcards. We'll spell out whatever you want to say, but for tonight, I need you to listen." She leaned in, her voice tightening. "You were right to stay silent. Whatever's going on here, it's deeper than I thought." Cameron blinked once. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small notebook. "I've been reviewing the internal logs. Not just your vitals. Staff rotations. Drug logs. There are entire shifts missing. The previous nurse, Miranda Kwan, disappeared 2 days after your crash. I found no resignation letter. No transfer. Nothing. Just gone." Cameron's blood chilled. "And that's not the worst part," Celeste added. "Earlier this evening, I overheard a conversation. In the hallway." She glanced toward the door, then whispered, "Your COO, Avery Caldwell, and Dr. Tillman. They're planning to declare you legally incapacitated by the end of this week. The board vote is scheduled for Friday morning." Cameron blinked twice. He knew what that meant. They're using this clause in your executive contract. If you're deemed medically unfit to lead for more than 21 days, temporary power goes to the next highest-ranking officer, Avery. Penelope's been meeting with the company's legal counsel under the radar, pushing to convert the clause into a full transition of power. Cameron blinked once. He had known Penelope had a taste for control, but not this kind of treachery. "I thought maybe it was a power grab," Celeste went on. "But tonight, while I was adjusting your 4, I saw a document in your chart. One they didn't intend for anyone to see. It mentioned something called the Aurora Initiative." At the name, Cameron twitched visibly this time. "You know it?" Celeste asked. 1 blink. "What is it?" Cameron strained to move his finger, but failed. He blinked once. Then again. Then once more. Celeste stared. "You want to explain, but not now." "Okay, I'll give you time." That name, Aurora, had become his life's work. A breakthrough in sustainable energy, a gridless power model capable of supplying renewable electricity to underserved communities across the country. It had been his secret passion project, funded outside of board oversight, managed with the help of a handful of trusted allies, most notably attorney Naomi Ellis. If the board, or worse, his brother and wife, gained control before Aurora launched, everything he built would be gutted for private gain. The system would be sold to the highest bidder. The communities it was meant to empower would be left in the dark once again. Celeste looked down at him, her gaze filled with something that Cameron hadn't seen in weeks. Conviction. "I've already started lowering your sedation incrementally," she said. "No one's noticed yet, but in a few days, you'll be able to sit up, maybe even speak. We'll work in increments." She stood, walked to the corner of the room, and reached behind a faux panel wall. Cameron couldn't see what she was doing, but soon she returned with a small set of flashcards and plastic sleeves. "Tomorrow night, we start spelling." Just then, the intercom buzzed. "Routine check-in." A voice crackled. "Everything okay in there?" Celeste's calm voice responded. "Vitals are steady. I'm finishing up now." Cameron listened as she gently repositioned his arm, pulled the blanket up over his chest, and leaned in one last time. "They think you're dead weight," she whispered. "But they have no idea you're watching their every move." Then she said something he wouldn't forget. "And neither do I. But I believe you deserve the truth, even if it costs me everything." When she left, the suite fell silent again. The monitor beeped steadily. The lights dimmed even further. But inside his mind, Cameron Drake was no longer playing dead. He was preparing for war. By the third night, the silence inside Cameron Drake's suite had become something sacred, a battlefield of thoughts, memories, and meticulous planning. Every beep of the monitor, every flicker in the hallway lights, was no longer just part of the sterile ambience. It was a variable, a potential threat, or an opportunity. Celeste Monroe returned just after 1 a.m., as scheduled. She moved with purpose now, her presence less cautious, more resolved. "I brought the cards," she whispered, locking the door behind her. From her bag, she pulled out a stack of laminated index cards, each printed with a large black letter. A makeshift alphabet. They arranged them on the tray table in rows like a child's first spelling lesson. Cameron blinked slowly, one for yes. He was ready. "Let's test," she said, holding her pen and tablet. "Spell your first word." Cameron shifted his eyes from one letter to the next. "C-A-U-T-I-O-N." Celeste read aloud, brows furrowed. "Caution." One blink. She nodded. "Understood. You think someone might be listening." He blinked twice. "Or watching." One slow blink. She reached up and covered the room's ceiling camera with a small square of surgical tape. "Tampering with clinic security is a fireable offense," she said with a wry smile. "So let's hope no one checks tonight." They continued, letter by letter. "M. Y." Celeste whispered, "My. B. R. O. T. H. E. R. My brother," she repeated, lips tightening. "He's behind this." One blink. She stepped back and exhaled. "Jesus. A. N. D. M. M. Y. W. I. F. E. My brother and my wife," she repeated under her breath. "That's who did this." Cameron's eyes moved again. "A. U. R. O. R. A." Celeste paused. "Aurora, that's what you called the secret project, isn't it?" Blink. She picked up her tablet and began searching the Drake Dynamics internal database. Nothing. No mention of Aurora anywhere in public files. "They scrubbed it clean," she muttered. "Whatever this is, it's off-grid." "Hush, hush." Cameron spelled again. S-T-O-L-E. She froze. "They stole it." One long blink. That night, she stayed for nearly 3 hours. With the door locked and the camera obscured, they built a primitive but effective communication system. Cameron spelled, she transcribed. Sentence by sentence, the web unraveled. The Aurora project had been designed as a fully autonomous microgrid system, built to power remote and underprivileged communities using next-generation solar composites and kinetic feedback loops. Its pilot was scheduled to launch in the Appalachian Corridor next quarter until the plane crash happened. And now, with Cameron presumed comatose, his vision was being buried. What are they planning to do with it? Celeste asked aloud, barely able to finish the question. R-E-D-I-R-E-C-T. To private defense contractors? Blink. They want to sell it. Blink. To bury it. 1 blink. To modify and weaponize it. 2 blinks. They want to keep it for profit, remove your name, and license it to energy monopolies. Blink. Celeste looked sick. What about Naomi Ellis? She asked. Can she stop it? S-H-E-S. Cameron spelled faster now, more determined. B-E-I-N-G-S-E-T-U-P. Set up how? F-A-L-S-E-D-O-C-S. Falsified documents. Blink. Celeste leaned forward. I can try to reach someone in her office. Maybe send an anonymous tip. Blink. Suddenly, footsteps outside. They both froze. The door handle jiggled. A voice called out. Nurse Monroe? Night rounds are behind. Everything all right in there? Yes, Celeste replied smoothly. He's stable. I'll be out in just a moment. She moved swiftly. The cards vanished back into her bag. She wiped down the tray, adjusted the blanket, and pulled off the tape from the ceiling cam. She leaned in close. We're running out of time. Cameron blinked once. That afternoon, after her shift ended, Celeste didn't go home. She took a detour through the executive wing and positioned herself near the clinic's main elevator, clipboard in hand. From behind a potted ficus tree, she waited. At precisely 3:17 p.m., Avery Caldwell appeared, accompanied by Dr. Marcus Tillman. Both were deep in hushed conversation. Celeste activated her phone's recorder. The board vote is Friday. Avery muttered, checking his Rolex. We need the final neurological report by Thursday at the latest. Tillman responded nervously. The scans will say whatever you need them to say, but the night nurse has been reviewing logs. She's asking questions. Avery waved a hand dismissively. She's a nurse, Marcus. Fire her if she gets too curious. Celeste's hand clenched around the phone. She didn't know Cameron Drake 2 weeks ago. But now, this wasn't just about protecting a patient. It was about protecting the truth. Later that night, she slipped into room 17A with fire in her eyes. I have everything, she whispered. Audio, timestamps, names. We need to move. Cameron blinked once. Then again. She smiled grimly. Time to bring in a specialist. He spelled the name. C-H-U-N. Dr. Chun. Blink. Celeste nodded. I'll find her. The war had officially begun. By the time dawn broke on the 6th day since their secret alliance began, the air inside Suite 17A had changed. Not the temperature, not the lighting, but the energy. It pulsed with an unspoken urgency, like the final moments before a storm breaks. Celeste Monroe entered just after 2 a.m., this time not alone. With her was a sharp-eyed woman in her late 40s, Asian American, dressed in a tailored navy blazer and flat medical shoes. She carried no hospital badge, only a steel briefcase. Dr. Mei Chun. She introduced herself in a low, steady voice. Forensic neurology. Independent board certified. Cameron blinked once. Celeste turned to him. I told her everything. She's one of the best, and she doesn't trust hospital systems any more than we do. Dr. Chun nodded. We only have about 30 minutes before the floor supervisor makes rounds. Let's work quickly. With practiced movements, she closed the blinds, disconnected the room from the internal camera feed using a small disruptor device, and dimmed the lights to the lowest legal setting. Then she began her silent examination. Eyes, reflexes, nerve response. Cameron did what he could. Small movements, involuntary reactions. This man, she whispered after 20 minutes, has zero structural brain damage. His EEG shows periods of high-level cognitive function. The sedation levels this as criminal. Celeste's voice was urgent. But can we prove it? Dr. Chun opened her case, revealing a compact tablet and a scanner no larger than a smartphone. We can, but we'll need one more scan, one that won't trigger hospital alerts. I can run a localized neurochemical profile right here, but it'll need full cooperation. Cameron blinked once. Then again, he was ready. As the scan began, Celeste placed her hand gently on his forearm. You're going to walk into that boardroom, and they're going to fall apart. 36 hours later, across town in the towering glass headquarters of Drake Dynamics, Avery Caldwell strode into the executive boardroom with the swagger of a man moments away from becoming emperor. 12 directors sat around the long oak table, each impeccably dressed, laptops open, brows furrowed behind silver-rimmed glasses. Some were old allies. Others were fair-weather friends. but all of them were ready to vote. "Ladies and gentlemen," Avery began, placing printed copies of a thick medical file in front of each board member. "It is with great sadness that I present this update. Our founder and CEO, Mr. Cameron Drake, has suffered irreversible neurological damage. According to the final report from Dr. Marcus Tillman." "Where is Dr. Tillman?" asked Dr. Lila Brooks, one of the company's senior data scientists and the only black woman on the board. Her sharp eyes narrowed. "An emergency," Avery answered smoothly. "He was called out on a separate hospital matter." Lila said nothing but didn't look convinced. She thumbed through the medical file with a physician's scrutiny. "These graphs are convenient." Avery ignored her. "As acting COO and designated successor, I recommend invoking Clause 47B, the immediate transfer of executive powers for the purpose of stabilizing shareholder confidence. The stock is down 11% since the accident." Across the table, Penelope Drake dabbed her eyes with a tissue, feigning emotion. Her wedding ring was conspicuously absent. "If there are no objections," Avery continued, "we'll move to a vote." He reached for the company's seal, and then a voice cut through the room like a blade. "Not so fast." The room turned dead silent. All heads whipped toward the boardroom's tall double doors, which had been flung open with calm authority. Standing there, poised and unshakable, was Cameron Drake. Alive, awake, and very much not incapacitated. He stood straight, dressed in a charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection, one hand resting on a dark walnut cane. Beside him, Celeste Monroe stood to his right in her nurse's scrubs, a fire of quiet defiance in her gaze. To his left, Dr. Mei Chun carried the same steel briefcase. Behind them, walking with confident purpose, was Naomi Ellis, no longer just his legal counsel, but now a weapon of justice, her black leather briefcase clutched like a sword. Avery's face went pale. This isn't possible." Cameron stepped into the center of the room, every footstep punctuating the silence like a verdict. "Dr. Tillman," he said, voice rich and steady, "is currently being questioned by federal agents for attempted murder, falsifying medical records, and conspiracy to commit corporate fraud." Dr. Chun stepped forward and opened her case. "These are the neurological scans conducted outside of Providence Heights Medical. They show that Mr. Drake was sedated beyond medical necessity, and in fact, exhibited signs of cognitive recovery as early as day 3. Penelope stood, trembling. "This is a setup. He's confused. He hit his head. He doesn't know what he's saying." "Sit down," Cameron said coldly. "You forfeited the right to speak for me the moment you tried to erase me." He turned to Naomi. She opened her briefcase and handed folders to each board member. "Those are email logs," Naomi said, "between Mr. Caldwell and Mrs. Drake, discussing the elimination of Project Aurora. Phrases like removing the final obstacle and full control once he's gone." Penelope's composure cracked. "They're misinterpreted." "No," Naomi said calmly. "They're premeditated." Cameron's eyes narrowed as he looked at the man who shared his blood but not his soul. "You tried to kill me over a project that was never about profit. Aurora is about power, real power. Not to hoard, but to give." Celeste stepped forward, holding up a tablet. On the screen, a video played. Avery's voice in the hospital hallway, whispering to Dr. Tillman, "Keep him under. Once the board votes, let nature take its course." "Accidents happen." Gasps echoed around the table. "You rigged this entire thing," Dr. Brooks said sharply, rising to her feet. "And you nearly got away with it." Naomi placed one final document on the table. Bank transfers from an offshore account belonging to Avery Caldwell, $750,000 paid to Dr. Marcus Tillman 3 days before the crash. Penelope collapsed into her chair. Avery looked ready to bolt. "Mr. Drake," a security officer stepped into the room. "Police are waiting downstairs. Shall we escort them?" Cameron nodded. "Please do." As they were let out, Avery shouting something about investor panic, Penelope crying crocodile tears. Cameron turned back to the board. "Your vote," he said simply, "is no longer necessary." He sat in the chair at the head of the table, his chair, and took a breath. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't surviving. He was leading, and the resurrection of Cameron Drake had just begun. It had been 6 months since Cameron Drake walked into the boardroom and shattered the illusion of his own demise. 6 months since betrayal had worn the mask of family, and justice arrived not with vengeance, but with absolute clarity. The headquarters of Drake Dynamics, once a cold cathedral of ambition and silent backroom deals, now pulsed with something entirely different. Energy, purpose, transformation. On the rooftop of the campus, solar panels from the Aurora project gleamed under the early morning California sun. Cameron stood near the edge of the terrace, hands tucked into his coat pockets, watching the city stretch awake beneath him. The skyline shimmered, but he wasn't looking at wealth or success anymore. He was looking at legacy. Behind him, glass doors slid open. Celeste Monroe stepped out holding a tablet, the same one she used to decode his blinks not so long ago. "You need to see this," she said, eyes bright. Cameron turned. Celeste tapped the screen and played a short video, a classroom in Oakland, where kids in worn-out uniforms sat beneath LED lights powered entirely by the Aurora grid. One child looked up at the camera and smiled, showing missing front teeth and a future full of light. "We've hit a 78% reduction in energy costs at all pilot sites," Celeste reported. 3 more school districts are lined up. The state is watching. So are a few senators. Cameron smiled, not the polite boardroom smile, but something real, something earned. "What about the shareholders?" "Still nervous," she said. "But the stock is up 42% since we announced national expansion." He gave a small chuckle. "Looks like purpose pays." Celeste paused, then added, "There's more." They walked down the corridor toward the executive wing. Waiting inside was Naomi Ellis, now chief legal officer, and Dr. Lila Brooks, recently appointed to the board's ethics committee. On the table sat crisp documents, folders, and one framed certificate. "The foundation is officially registered," Naomi said, sliding the papers toward him. "The Drake Ellis Foundation for Ethics in Healthcare." Cameron's brows lifted slightly. "Ellis." Lila smirked. "She insisted your name go first." Cameron looked at Celeste, who hadn't stopped smiling. She nodded toward the plaque. His eyes scanned the engraved words. "Protecting patients when they cannot protect themselves." A line below it read, "Celeste Monroe, first recipient of the Drake Ellis Guardian Award." She blinked, visibly moved. "You didn't have to put my name on this." He shook his head slowly. "You saved my life. Your name belongs at the beginning of this new chapter." Naomi added, "We're allocating 30% of Aurora's net proceeds to build hospital accountability systems." Camera monitored critical care rooms, external medication audits, anonymous reporting channels, independent ethics ombudsman. Celeste's voice was barely above a whisper. This could change everything." "It already is," Naomi said. But just as the moment settled, Naomi's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen, then frowned. "It's from a secure line at the federal facility." Cameron raised an eyebrow. "Victor?" Naomi nodded. "He wants to talk. Claims he has information." "About what?" Naomi hesitated. "He says there are others. Executives. Political connections. Energy lobbyists. That your crash wasn't just a family scheme, it was part of a larger plan to destroy Aurora before it reached mass implementation." Cameron didn't flinch. "He wants to trade information for leniency. Should we set the meeting?" Naomi asked. He turned to the window, the light reflecting off his dark suit like polished armor. After a long pause, he said quietly, "No." Naomi blinked. "No. Let him sit in silence," Cameron said. "The truth has a way of surfacing when ego gets bored and fear starts to whisper." That afternoon, Cameron and Celeste walked through the newly renovated Aurora Research Wing. Young engineers, many from historically underrepresented backgrounds, buzzed around prototype models, testing, refining, dreaming out loud. "You know what amazes me most?" Celeste asked. "What's that?" "It's not the tech," she said. "It's the culture. Half these people wouldn't have had a chance at a place like this 2 years ago. You've changed that." Cameron looked around. Brown skin, braids, turbans, tattoos. A quiet rebellion against the old order, now building the new one. "When I was in that hospital bed," he said, "paralyzed, watching the people closest to me plot my death, do you know what scared me most?" Celeste looked up. "That maybe none of it ever mattered," he said. "The money, the deals, the empire. That I built all this, and it would just be taken. Not because I failed, but because I wasn't protected. Because I wasn't white, or connected, or convenient." She said nothing. She didn't need to. "But then you showed up," he continued, his voice low. "And for the first time, I realized purpose is a better bodyguard than power." They stopped in front of a new installation in the main lobby. A sleek glass wall bore an engraved quote. "True strength isn't how much power you accumulate, but how you respond when that power is threatened. It is in our moments of greatest vulnerability that we discover our true essence." Celeste traced the words with her eyes. "I remember saying that to you," she said softly. "I didn't know you were listening." "I always was," Cameron replied. Then, quietly, he reached for her hand. "We're not done, Celeste," he said. "This isn't the end of the road." She squeezed his hand gently. "No," she whispered. "It's just the beginning." And across town, inside a gray concrete cell, Victor Caldwell stared at the wall, listening to silence, wondering how he had lost everything trying to kill a man who never really died, just paused long enough to outthink him. Night had fallen over the west coast, casting a soft glow on the Aurora logo that now crowned the skyline of the Drake Dynamics Tower. But inside the building, light still spilled from the research center where Cameron Drake and Celeste Monroe stood shoulder to shoulder, reviewing the final schematics for the next-generation Aurora unit. A year ago, Cameron had nearly died for this project. Now, it was ready to change the world. The lab was buzzing with energy young scientists of every background, race, and gender circled tables and whiteboards, sketching, debating, innovating without the fear of being silenced, dismissed, or outmaneuvered. They weren't just employees. They were builders of a future no longer dictated by corporate greed or institutional racism. Celeste leaned over a prototype and smiled. "When I walked into your hospital room that night, I thought I was just stepping into another shift. I never imagined I'd be helping a billionaire fake a coma and take down a conspiracy." Cameron chuckled. "You didn't just help me survive. You helped me reset the entire compass of this company, of my life." She turned to him, serious now. "Why didn't you just reclaim your company and walk away? You had every reason to cut your losses." He looked past her, toward a row of photographs pinned along a bulletin board, images from pilot programs in West Baltimore, South Dakota reservations, Appalachian coal towns. Children doing homework by solar light. Clinics running ventilators during blackouts. Women entrepreneurs charging devices to run online businesses from mobile kiosks. "Because I realized," Cameron said, "that survival without purpose is just existence. I didn't build this empire to make Wall Street happy. I built it to make impact possible." Celeste took a breath. "You could have died in that crash." "I did," he replied. "The man I was before? Obsessed with control, afraid of betrayal, measuring everything by quarterly returns, that version of me died somewhere over Arizona. What survived was someone willing to burn down the boardroom if it meant lighting a fire in communities no one else will touch." They stood in silence for a moment, until Naomi Ellis and Dr. Lila Brooks entered the lab. Naomi held a document in her hands. "We just got word. Congress approved federal support for Aurora expansion, $500 million in infrastructure grants. Renewable energy to historically neglected communities on 3 continents. Lila added. "And Victor Caldwell's intel from prison?" "Confirmed. At least 8 top executives from traditional energy firms were in on it. The Justice Department's launching an investigation." Cameron gave a knowing nod. "I figured Victor didn't have the intellect to mastermind it alone." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You still don't want to see him?" "No," Cameron said flatly. "He's already in the only place that ever made him honest." Lila stepped forward. "There's one last thing. We were discussing a memorial wall in the lobby, not for the dead, but for the silenced. Nurses, whistleblowers, employees who spoke up and paid the price. I think we should name it after someone." She turned to Celeste. Celeste blinked. "Me?" Naomi smiled. "You risked your job, your life, your license, because you believed one comatose man might still have a voice." Cameron added, "You didn't just wake me up, Celeste. You woke up a movement." Later that night, in the quiet of the executive floor, Cameron stood before a new glass installation in the company lobby. At its center, etched in silver, were the words, "True legacy isn't measured by what we leave behind, but by who rises because we dared to stay standing." Beneath it, a brass plaque, "The Celeste Monroe Wall of Courage," a tribute to those who refused silence when the world demanded it. Celeste approached, staring at her name in disbelief. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" she said. Cameron smiled. "You earn more than a plaque." She looked at him, curious. "I want you to co-lead the new Global Ethics and Impact Division." You'll oversee Aurora deployments, hospital partnerships, integrity systems. You'll be the moral compass this company never had. Celeste's eyes widened. Cameron, I was just a nurse. No, he said gently. You were the only one who didn't treat me like a body in a bed. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he replied. She nodded slowly. Yes. That weekend, as Victor Caldwell stared at gray prison walls and Penelope Drake adjusted to the rules of a minimum security facility in Nevada, Cameron and Celeste traveled to the Navajo Nation, one of the first places to receive Aurora's next rollout. As the system powered on, families gathered around, watching the lights flicker to life. Children cheered, elders wept, and for a moment, the noise of Wall Street, courtrooms, and betrayal felt like distant echoes of a story that had long since ended. But it hadn't, because for Cameron Drake, this wasn't the final chapter. It was the prologue to a future where justice wasn't just spoken, it was powered. Where every patient, every worker, every forgotten community could say, we were seen, we were heard, and we were never powerless. What if the very moments designed to break us are the ones that reveal who we truly are? The story of Cameron Drake isn't just about power, betrayal, or corporate greed. It's about the quiet resistance of integrity. It's about the strength found in silence, the courage to listen when others speak lies, and the power of one person choosing to do what's right, even when no one is watching. In a world that often rewards ambition over ethics, this story reminds us that power without purpose is hollow. But when power is used to protect the voiceless, to uplift communities, and to dismantle systems of injustice, it becomes something greater. It becomes legacy. If this story moved you, made you think, or sparked something inside you, don't just watch and walk away. Let your voice be part of this conversation. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced betrayal in silence? Or stood up when it was easier to look away? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit the subscribe button. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We bring light to the ones that matter. The ones that show how even in our darkest hour, with the odds stacked against us, courage and purpose can still win. Thank you for watching, and remember, the real power lies not in how much we control, but in how we choose to use our voice when it matters most.